Good evening, everyone, to this meeting on sickle cell awareness. We are very pleased to have Iyamide Thomas with us today from Sickle Cell Society, who will be talking to us about this disease. I will let our Vice President Caroline Anele to introduce her, but before that, I would request Lola Sanbo to say the grace.
With our friends beside us, and no person beneath us, with the bonds of rotary between us, and our worries behind us, with our goals before us, and no task beyond us, with a thirst for knowledge, and a dream of a peaceful world, we are thankful according to our individual beliefs for our rotary friends and the fellowship we are about to share.
Thank you, Lola. I would like to now ask our Vice President Caroline to introduce our speaker today.
Please help me give a warm welcome to Iyamide Thomas. She is the NHS Engagement Lead of the Sickle Cell Society. I've known her for some years, and she's a lady with many caps and many qualities, as you will find in her speech. She'll be speaking to us about sickle cell disease today. And as we all know, this is a devastating condition where we are lucky in this country, we've got a screening program, but in some countries, there's no screening program. So it's not uncommon to see a child below 5 years old appearing, and before we know what's happening, the child is dead. But I'll let Iyamide expand on all this for you. Iyamide, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for inviting me to your Black History Month. I am assuming it's a Black History Month event. And as Caroline said, my name is Iyamide Thomas from the NHS. I'm the NHS Engagement Lead of the Sickle Cell Society. I thought I'd put a spin on this event because of Black History Month and talk about the West African discovery of sickle cell as well. So it's going to have a spice of Black history in it, you know, so let's go. I will try and make sure. Okay, to tell everybody what sickle cell is, it's a condition of hemoglobin in our blood, which is a protein in our blood. And what sickle cell is, a mutated form of hemoglobin distorts the red blood cells, which are usually round. I'm going to hold a round blood cell. I don't know if and you can see this. I'm going to show my active speaker. Right, I've got a round blood cell there, which I'm hoping everybody can see. And what happens is when blood goes round with people with sickle cell, that round blood cell changes its shape when it gives it up its oxygen to that shape, which is a crescent shape. A sickle is a half moon. A sickle is a tool, which is like a curved cutlass. And that's where it gets its name from. And what happens is the cells don't flow as much through the blood vessels. They start getting stuck and they cause tissue damage, severe pain, and anemia and other complications. I'm going to try and go the right way and show you an animated slide. So what I just showed you were the round blood cells going through, but as soon as it gets sickle, it then stops the flow of blood, causing pain and damage. That pain is known as a crisis. Yeah. So that was a nice animated slide showing, and these red blood cells get very stiff as well, and they form long chains. And get stuck, they don't let blood flow, and that is really what causes all the complications of sickle cell. Who does it affect? It is the world's most commonly inherited blood condition, affecting millions across the world, and mainly people who originate from these areas: Africa, the Caribbean, Middle East, the Mediterranean, and India. And that's because the gene for sickle cell is thought to be linked to malaria. It was nature's way of protecting against malaria. There was a mutation in a gene, and it became what's known as the sickle gene, the S gene. And you can see there, I'm hoping you can see my cursor. That's really the malaria belt. Africa, West Africa, India. So people with from malarial areas actually had this gene that protected them against malaria. They carrying one copy of the gene protected against malaria. And that will hopefully go the right way. It's an inherited condition. I have put here some graphics, and it's known as a recessive gene, the gene for sickle cell, the S gene. You need 2 copies of it to actually have the condition. If you have 1 copy, you're known as trait. These 2, they're the 2 parents. AS, you're known as sickle cell carrier or trait. And when they have a child, each person gives 1 gene for hemoglobin. If the mother, is that the mother? That's the dad, sorry. If the dad gives up 1 gene at every pregnancy, let's say the dad gives up the A gene, the mother gives up the A gene, that child is AA and doesn't have any sickle cell or the gene. If, say, the mother gave the A and the father gave the S, that child would be AS, etc. For a child to be sickle cell, they have to give up, the mother has to have contributed the S gene and the father has to have contributed the S gene. So that child's hemoglobin genotype will be known as SS. And at every pregnancy where the mother and dad are carriers, there's a 25% chance that baby will have sickle cell. There's a 50% chance the child would be AS, which is a carrier status, and there's a 25% chance the child will be with no gene for sickle cell at all. I'll give you some facts for the UK about sickle cell. As I said, there are millions around the world, but in the UK, approximately 380,000 people carry the gene. Approximately 15,000 have sickle cell disorder. Every year in the UK, 270 babies are born with the condition, and I'll tell you what's been done around that. The trait is common. 1 in 4 West Africans carry the sickle cell trait. That means they only have 1 gene for the condition. Having the trait, it's very good to know that you have the trait because you can pass it on. Having the trait, you need to know if you're going for an operation, general anesthesia, because people with the trait can sickle when they're under general anesthesia. So they always test for that. If you're having general anesthesia, or if you're going deep sea diving, any area where oxygen, if the oxygen is low, the tendency is you might sickle if you're the trait. Obviously, if you're full-blown sickle cell, you sickle as well. So there's some of the complications. Where's my, yeah. Those red blood cells I showed you, the sickle cells, which I'm holding up, and I'm hoping you can see them. They don't last as long as these round ones, and whereas this would last over 100 days, so the sickle ones only last 20 days, and that causes anemia. So the sickle cell, the anemia in sickle cell is not an iron deficient anemia, it's the fact that the red blood cells breaking up very easy, very quickly. So it's a shortage of blood cells as opposed to an iron deficiency. Pain episodes, I mentioned that earlier, the crisis when these cells get stuck in the blood vessels, they stop oxygen going to all the parts of the body, and of course organs need oxygen. It can cause stroke, kidney failure, pneumonia, chest syndrome, that's a form of sickle cell. Acute chest syndrome is a symptom. Increased infections, leg ulcers. Infections are caused, the spleen, people with sickle cell, their spleen sometimes has to be removed. And of course, the spleen helps us fight bacteria. So they're prone to infections and have to take all the precautions against that, not go out and eat salad and get salmonella and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Yeah. The impact, it's quite a debilitating condition, and having those crises can put you in hospital for weeks on end if you have it really badly. There's a psychological burden of not knowing whether you're going to have a crisis. You can't really plan things. There's a lot of stigma around sickle cell. People think it's a black disease. They think it's a curse. There are all sorts of myths around it. It obviously affects some people's mental health and physical well-being, not knowing when you're going to be ill, access to various jobs and things. Sometimes you don't, some people don't even put it on their job application form that they have sickle cell, but I always tell people that they should, because your workplace should be adapted to take on board some of the issues you might undergo. If you're climbing too many stairs, you don't want a job where you're standing on your feet all day, especially if you have leg ulcers. There can be a lot of social exclusion because some people just don't want to mix really. And we try to get rid of that stigma. Access to services, they usually need good housing, you know, a nice warm house, because there are various things that trigger that crisis, such as infection, if it's too cold, if they're dehydrated. So I tell people not to smoke or drink because that causes dehydration. I'm going the wrong way. I'll get it. Right. So how do we manage it? Of course, drink a lot of fluid so you're not dehydrated. Antibiotics, obviously if you get infection. Rest, because if you're anemic, you're short of oxygen, you are going to be tired. Pain medication, very, very strong painkillers are used sometimes. Morphine if they're going to hospital. Panadol, dihydrocodeine, these are all strong painkillers. Try and prevent infections. Healthy lifestyle. We tell the children, don't go out if it's cold with a backless, you know, dress that will make you catch cold. Sorry, and get a crisis. Blood transfusions are given to prevent stroke. If you've had a stroke, or if you're prone to stroke, they give you blood transfusions as prophylactic to prevent stroke. And that's where we need Black people to donate blood, you know, because there's certain blood types that, you know, if you have in the Black community that's needed. So please donate if you can. There's a screening program for sickle cell. I want to talk a bit about that. There's an NHS sickle cell and thalassemia screening program. And what that does is it offers screening to all pregnant women to see if they have the gene. The screen for sickle cell is a blood test. It's a special blood test, yeah? And they do the blood test. And if the mother-to-be, the pregnant woman, has the gene, they then call the baby's father to come and get tested. Because obviously, if the mother doesn't have the gene, there's no need to call the father, because as I said earlier, the baby will not have sickle cell. Both parents have to be carriers of the gene. So if they've tested the pregnant mother, she's AA, doesn't have sickle cell gene, there's no need to call the father, sorry, yeah? Now, that was a graphic we did during World Sickle Cell Day, the pandemic, which is why you've seen here that parents-to-be should still attend their antenatal appointments during the pandemic. We really need that. And they did, you know, they were scared, some were scared, but the nurses reported that people were attending, so that's good. It's a National Health Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Screening Program. It's antenatal, so it screens during pregnancy. If the mother is, as I said earlier, if the mother carries the gene, they call the baby's father to come and get tested. They also screen newborns, so it's an antenatal and newborn screening. They screen all newborn babies or offer sickle cell screening. It's 1 out of 9 conditions that are screened for. They do the heel prick. And if that baby is found to either have sickle cell, they can put in prophylactic things like they give folic acid, and antibiotics to prevent any major crisis. So that screening babies is very important to do. Also, it tells the partners, because if, say, the mother wasn't called, if the mother wasn't a carrier, they don't call the father. But if that baby is born and that baby is a carrier, it means the gene came from the father. So sometimes newborn screening is where men know that they carry the gene, you know, and other times a preconception screening where people can go to their GP and ask to get tested, especially if they have family members who have the gene and they're thinking of getting into a relationship or even having a baby. So yes, so preconception screening, you can ask your GP to get the blood test if you want. Right, this was me I did a lot of outreach work for the screening program. They funded a project called The Family Legacy, which was a DVD which we showed all around, you know, the UK. We showed it on Ben TV, all the television, Black TV stations on Sky had it. I had a team, by the way. This was in a barber shop. I just shown, because we wanted to target the men, because they weren't coming. When I started with the family legacy, there were only about 55% of the fathers to be attending the test when their pregnant wife or partner was found to have the gene, because that's when they called the father to come, and only half of them were coming. So we needed to raise awareness amongst men in particular. So I, did barbershop sessions, which was quite new for the NHS in those days. So we've just got more than just a haircut. And in that one, you can see they're all, I don't know, I hope you can see my cursor. They're all eating, I gave them food, by the way, and they're all eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and paying attention. If you feed them, they pay attention, the men. So that was very successful. And the uptake amongst men has gone up now to maybe late 60%, 60. So that's quite good. I think some of it is probably due to that awareness that was raised. Keep going the wrong way, sorry. So I thought I'd give you a bit of history of sickle cell, since it's Black History Month. The first recorded case in the West was 1910, and it was by a Chicago cardiologist called James Herrick. He looked at the blood smear. One of his patients was very anemic and was complaining of all sorts of things. So James Herrick looked under a microscope, and what he found, the patient was called Walter Clement. Walter Clement was from Grenada, and sadly he died when he went back. He qualified as a dentist in America and went back to Grenada, but sadly died at age 32. And I'll get it. This is what Walter Clement saw when he looked under the microscope. They're the round cells and they're the sickle cells. So that was what he saw under the microscope. It reminded him of a curved cutlass, and he called it sickle cell anemia because the patient was very anemic. There's a plaque. When my boss, who's from Grenada, he went to Grenada one holiday, and I sent him on a mission to the cemetery. We know where Walter Clement is buried, and my boss, John, actually came back with this picture where they'd added the plaque saying that the first recorded case of sickle cell disorder is buried in that cemetery. So that was a new thing. But that's not the true history of sickle cell. Long before the Western discovery in America, generations of Africans were talking about this inherited illness called, they called it all sorts of names, oral history passed down. And the earliest publication of the features of sickle cell, although it wasn't known as sickle cell, was by a doctor called Africanus Horton, who was Sierra Leonean and from the Creole ethnic group. So let me tell you a bit about Africanus Horton. He wrote a book in 1874 called The Diseases of Tropical Climates and Their Treatment, where he described basically what was sickle cell, the painful crisis in the rainy season, abnormality of blood. And I actually went to the British Library. I ordered that book, which is what, over 130 years old? Oh, I can't do the maths today. But I ordered the book and they brought it out from the British Library. And I went through it, and there was some I stayed there for about 2.5 hours going through this book that Africanus Horton had written. And he did talk about a lot of things. And, for that sort of time period, you really think, wow, because a lot of children don't think that they're doctors. The young people don't think doctors from Africa had qualified in that time. I'm going to tell you a bit about Africanus Horton. He was born James Bill Horton on 1st of June, 1835 in Sierra Leone to Igbo parents, liberated Africans, and I'll tell you who those are in a while. He took the name Africanus Horton, Africanus, in those days he was proud of his African roots. He was one of the first African doctors, 1859. I always say to the young people, Africans were qualifying in the 1800s. He was one of the first Africans. He was a military doctor, and he was in the British Army. He rose to lieutenant colonel. He spent a lot of time in Ghana during the Ashanti War. It's thought that he proofed that book that I mentioned earlier during the Ashanti War. He wrote on a variety of topics. You can Google him, and he died in Freetown, Sierra Leone in 1883. He was the first African graduate of the University of Edinburgh, and that plaque is actually at the University of Edinburgh. And it's there, James Africanus Horton of Sierra Leone. That was from the internet, or is that the one from my friend? Anyway, a friend whose daughter was in Edinburgh actually confirmed that and took pictures of the plaque for me. Yeah, that's what he looks like, Africanus Horton in his military year, a surgeon, scientist, all sorts of things. And he was also politically minded and was talking about African independence long before it came to the different colonies. Yeah. Just a brief thing who the Creoles are. They're an ethnic group that they're made of descendants from African Americans, Caribbean and African people who were resettled to the province of Freedom, initially it was called, and the British resettled them in 1787. Slavery was still going on in some parts when they started resettling the first lot of enslaved people. And in 1792, they settled some from Nova Scotia, which is in Canada, and they effectively founded the first British colony, and it was called Freetown, freed slaves. There's more about that. I have actually curated an exhibition at the Museum of London. It's currently there. If you want to know more about the Creoles of Sierra Leone, please do go to the Museum of London Docklands if you live in London. It's been extended till March the 14th of March next year. So the Creoles of Sierra Leone, that's me in the Creole attire. Just a bit about the sickle cell. We were a registered charity since 1979. A group of parents, patients, health professionals. There wasn't very much awareness about sickle cell, and they thought they'd get together and form a group to raise awareness, and that's developed into the charity that it is. One of our founders was Dame Elizabeth Anyonu, who won the Pride of Britain, ITV Pride of Britain Awards last year. Some of you might have seen it on ITV, and that really gave sickle cell a boost. We're based we're all at home at the moment, but we're based in Harlesden, up North London in Brent. This is what we offer: support services, education services, lobbying and campaigning, and we take part in research, a lot of research to even we find people, the drug research, social research, people partner us because we have access to obviously to sickle cell patients. And our contact details, we're a charity, so we are all suffering from lack of funds, because of the pandemic. There's no community fundraising. So we ask for donations, and we have our helpline still running. There are the details if anybody wants to contact us. But if you can fundraise on our behalf, that would be really great. And that's it. One more. We had World Sickle Cell Day on the 19th of June. That's an annual day to raise awareness all around the world. And it is a UN endorsed day. And this time our theme was Wear Something Red. And this is my cousin from Freetown, Sierra Leone. And as you can see, he surrounded himself with red. And I think he won the prize from my friends. Yeah, I'll stop sharing now. Okay.
Well, before we open for questions, we have a short message from our Vice President Caroline and our Community Chair Charity. So I'll just play that, and then we will go into questions and discussions. One thing to point out, Iyamide, is that 19th of June is this club's birthday as well.
It's World Sickle Cell Day.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a coincidence.
Okay, well, I will now play these messages. I hope you will be able to hear.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, please give us a few minutes to present our proposed sickle cell disease screening program in Africa. I am Caroline Anele, and Charity Anyika will present this with me. Do you know approximately 5% of the world's population are carriers of genes for hemoglobin disorders, mainly sickle cell disease and thalassemia. Over 300,000 babies are born with hemoglobin disorders every year. These conditions are prevalent in malaria regions of the world, especially Africa. The United Nations estimates there are 20 to 25 million people living with sickle cell disease worldwide. And of these, 12 to 15 million live in Africa. Sickle cell disease is a chronic inherited condition where the hemoglobin has a mutation which leads to sickle-shaped red blood cells, which are prematurely destroyed and can get stuck in small blood vessels. The main symptoms are anemia, pain, increased risk of infections, organ damage, and also it could lead to a high mortality rate, especially in the developing world, due to poorly funded healthcare systems.
So how can the risks, burden, and effect of sickle cell disorder be reduced? It was evident the most cost-effective strategy for reducing the burden and effects of sickle cell disorder is to complement disease management with prevention programs. Therefore, public awareness and training are paramount. So Caroline Anele and I have proposed to take this one step at a time. We plan to start a reliable antenatal and neonatal hemoglobinopathy screening programs, building on already established contacts of other health programs, example, antenatal care and child immunization programs. Establish a hemoglobinopathy counselors training. Provide effective laboratory equipment. Establish informative laboratory staff training. Offer opportunistic screening to the public, especially in the villages. Offer school program screening from primary school, secondary school, and universities. We will appreciate support from Stratford Rotary Club to start this life-saving program in Africa. We thank you in advance.
Dear ladies and gentlemen,
we can now have question and answers and any discussion. The floor is open.
Can I just say something? After looking at the DVD, sorry, you know, the one you just played.
Yes.
It's important for Caroline and, I can't remember the other lady's name. Charity. I'm not sure what areas they want to take screening to, but I have contacts here who can tell them what's already on the ground in Nigeria. So you don't go and reinvent the wheel in a way. In fact, just make sure that you probably talk to people who are doing screening in Nigeria as well, and they can probably even tell you what's needed so that you target, you know, what you're fundraising for, rather than just having it very open. Because I was part of a group that no longer exists. It was called London Focus Group on Sickle Cell in Africa. And that screening, we did something in Nigeria and got them an electrophoresis machine in one area of Nigeria so that they can do the test. So it's always good to talk to people so that you do your groundwork first.
Do you know the area where that is?
I can't remember. It's gone out of my head. But I'll have it in my files and thing. And Dr. Baba Inusa, who's well, now he's Professor Baba Inusa at St. Thomas's Hospital. He's one of the big names in sickle cell, and he does a lot in that. He was part of that group. I chaired the group. Yeah.
Because we are talking already. I think Caroline will shed more light on that.
You're working with Baba? What did you say? Sorry.
No,
we
with people already.
Yeah.
Okay, you were working with people in Nigeria already.
So we are talking already.
We're talking. Okay.
And I don't know whether he's still sort of doing a lot, but because he's old now, Professor Akinyanju. He's one of the big names in sickle cell in Nigeria. You know, at Lagos, the LUTH. Lagos, is that the hospital, University Hospital of
Yes,
Lagos?
Luz.
Yeah.
Yes, Luz.
Yeah. So you should,
Yeah. Caroline, do you want to say something?
Yeah, it definitely will be something we would eventually work with Baba on. At the moment, we have to do our groundwork so that when we present it to Baba, it will make more sense. He definitely is on our radar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we have connected with quite a few people, isn't it?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, but we'll definitely connect with Baba.
Trying to remember what area. I can't remember offhand where we sent the machine to. No question. Where's no question. Where's Andrew? Is it Andrew? What?
Yeah.
Is Andrew still on?
Yeah, I've got my hand up just now.
Okay, because you mentioned Andrew being something with sickles. You mentioned at the start. So
no, what it is that as president of the Rotary Club of Edgeworth and Stanmore this year, the president's charity is the Sickle Cell Disease Society in Sierra Leone.
Okay, I know them a lot. I work with them.
Yeah, with George Tregson Roberts and others.
I've done a lot of stuff.
That's what it is. But my question, I have a question. First of all, thank you for the informative presentation. And looking at your slide on the sickle cell traits, 1 in 4 in West Africa compared to 1 in 8 Afro-Caribbean to 1 in 500 British.
White.
Why is it so prevalent? Yeah, white British. Why is it so prevalent in West Africa?
It's due to, okay, as I said, I was rushing, but the reason why it's so prevalent in West Africa, when the sickle cell gene mutate, it came about because nature does that. Genes get changed to suit environmental conditions. And because malaria, we're near the equator, malaria is very prevalent in West Africa. So there were more people, the gene mutated, and there were more people who were AS, basically, and AS had more chances of procreating. And, there's a 1 in 4 chance that when 2 ASs meet, they will have a child with sickle cell. So it's all to do with the sums to do with malaria, basically. They don't have sickle cell. When I started the society, I found it really strange that in South Africa, which doesn't have malaria, they hardly have sickle cell. And some people don't even know about it there because they're further from the equator. They're not on the malaria belt. And the prevalence of sickle cell in South Africa is pretty low. It only except if people travel, to obviously people who are carriers. And that's how it went. Obviously, it went to America with the slave trade. People in America have sickle cell, the Caribbean as well. But it's all originated through that genetic change, that mutation of the hemoglobin gene to form the sickle hemoglobin gene.
Yeah.
Wait, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, sure.
So, what I'm understanding now, is it that the parents, because you're saying the environment where there's malaria, and is it the mosquito, the parasite?
I missed. Okay, you froze. I don't know if it was my internet or yours. So can you repeat it?
Okay, so my understanding now is because we have malaria in Africa, well, in Nigeria. So is it because the parents have been bitten by these mosquitoes? Then that is why the genes I don't understand. So that is where.
Okay, no, the genes, we have genes mutate and change environmentally. Because they even know the genes. I think. Yeah. Historically, in fact, they did make that link. I think it was in Uganda that link between malaria and the sickle cell gene was made. That the gene, it's a mutation in the amino acid, but I don't want to go. The chemistry is a bit. It's a very slight change between normal hemoglobin A and hemoglobin S. It's a chemical change, And
Yes.
apparently, historically, genes change according to your environment. People who carry one copy of the gene, they have a slight protection against malaria. It's not that they don't get malaria, but it kind of protects them a bit if they have one copy of the gene. I think the parasite probably dies with those cells that, I said the red cells die very quickly. So possibly those with the parasite will die very quickly if they're AS. But if they're SS means you have full-blown sickle cell. There are other things that happen, and you don't get the protection. Yes, you get. Yeah. There's that people that have been sort of doing work around, the gene and malaria, but that is thought to be the reason why it's distributed the way it is along the malaria belt, which is why Africa, we're near, we're one of the key places where, as you know, malaria. And as I said, South Africa, Southern Africa, it's not a prevalent place for malaria. And the gene is not prevalent there at all, which that certainly convinced me when I found that one out, until then I thought, okay, but once, you start talking to South Africans, they don't get sickle cell down there, except people who've moved, of course, and obviously to trade people there, but they don't get it down there. And in white people, the screening program is what is finding out that babies who look white are being born, about 1 in 500 are being born with the sickle cell gene. So they must have had an ancestor way up the line, maybe that was from a malarial area, but they don't look black, they look white, because we know that when you mix, as you go along and dilute, if you marry somebody who's white, Caucasian, blah, blah, by the time you're down to what, I don't know what descendant, you probably look quite white. But yet and when you have the sickle cell gene, you don't necessarily know, because it doesn't really affect you unless you get tested, or as I said, you go for, you're doing things where you will be affected, like swimming or very exertive exercise. Sometimes if you're a sickle cell trait, because they found that in America as well, that people who were doing very, athletes were suffering with exhaustion because they were carriers. And I think there was some law passed there for footballers or something, because when you have the trait, some of your cells do sickle, but not bad enough to affect you like sickle cell trait. And one thing I was going to say, we should really get away from the stigma, because people are embarrassed by it. Sometimes parents don't tell the school that their child has sickle cell, and that's really bad, because if that child has a crisis, they wouldn't know, how to treat it, because they haven't been told. Some parents don't tell people in their church. I can write a book about scenarios where people haven't said why that their child or they have sickle cell, and things have happened. And, I can tell you that I know 2 sisters where the one had a child with sickle cell, but didn't tell the other sister until then. When the other sister had their own child, that's when they knew that sickle cell was in the family. Imagine, you see, that's not, it's not a condition to be ashamed of. And when we do outreach, we give the reason why the gene existed, this malaria, beneficial effect from malaria, because I try and use that to remove the stigma, because they think, oh, it's a Black disease. They think, a friend of mine, again, she works within sickle cell in Ghana. There was a time I told her to give me all the myths around sickle cell. They think it's a curse, that you were cursed when you were pregnant, that some people used to go and leave the babies by the river because they thought the child was cursed. They have a word in Nigeria, exactly. Well, maybe you want to explain to the rest about that. Spirit child, is it? You explained, Caroline.
Yeah, the child that comes and goes, they say. But what they didn't realize is it's the genes. So obviously, because the other children carried the gene, so they were dying also, but they kept thinking it was the child that was coming and going. So they have Obanje, Abiku, all those names. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So many myths.
Yes, you have a question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it me?
Yeah, yes, Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As I understand it, those suffering from sickle cell disease, their condition can only be managed. There is no cure for it. Do you think that eventually there will be a cure, or is it going to continue like this forever?
There is actually a cure. There is a cure for sickle cell. It's just that it's not a universal cure. Sickle cell can be cured by bone marrow transplant, or what's also known as stem cell transplant. Because your blood is made in your bone marrow. If you think your bone marrow is like, just think of a chicken bone, that squashy bit in the middle. That's bone marrow, and that's where red blood cells are made. And what they do in to cure sickle cell, they actually replace the bone marrow, but you need a donor. You need a donor. You need a very good match. They do it here. They do it across the world. Bone marrow transplant. It cures sickle cell, but it doesn't get rid of the gene. So what happens is the person will be cured of all their crises and all the things that happen with sickle cell, but they still have the gene with them. Now we also say, because they have the gene, you think, okay, you have your SS, you have the gene and you can pass it on, to even if you marry somebody who's AS or whatever. But also what I found out is when they do the bone marrow, I think it causes infertility anyway. So I'm not, you probably have to check that. But yeah, so what I think they do as well sometimes is they before they do the operation, the people who probably want children, they save the donor egg and all that sort of thing. But yeah, there is a cure, but it's not available to everybody. Yeah. And it's very, very, when you get it, you have to be monitored. Sadly, I know a child that died from a bone marrow transplant in this country. I actually went to her memorial. So yeah, but as a cure, it's there, but it's not available to everybody. So as Andrew said, you have to manage it with strong painkillers, healthy lifestyle. I think I put the slide up. So for most people, in a way, there isn't a cure because, bone marrow transplant, I'm not sure even if they do it in Africa.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Certainly not in Sierra Leone. If anywhere, it will be
not even Nigeria.
If anywhere, it'll either be South Africa, where they don't have, has really good, medical facilities. But I don't think they do it. In fact, we've had queries from parents in Nigeria wanting to come here to do it.
No.
To come here to do it. It
will be done in Nigeria.
Yeah. But what we told, I remember a while back, we had a father who was coming from Nigeria, but then he needed to stay for months, because it's something where the child has to be monitored and a lot of things. And he thought he could just come with a child and go back. And that's not how it works at all. Because they have to see if it actually worked, really. Because at some stage you're removing all the bone marrow, and I think the person is very, very susceptible to infection for a period, when they're doing the exchange, really. So, but they do it at St. Mary's Hospital. The first adult was done at Tooting, St. George's, around, I think, 2008. They did the first adult or something like that. So it does happen. Yeah. And it's expensive. They try, the NHS, there are all sorts of things about doing it. But there was a campaign as well. There was another chap from Cambridge who went on television, and he'd had a bone marrow transplant. But they tend to want to do it more for children, because I think there's where their organs haven't deteriorated much, you see, because obviously with sickle cell, the older you get them, and with all that sickling, organs tend to deteriorate. I had a client who had two kidney transplants, and she passed away, in fact, some years ago. So the older you get, the more your organs tend to be a bit, not suitable for when you do the bone marrow transplant. Is that Andrew? I think you're muted.
Yep, Andrew.
Can I ask just one last question? Sorry. Mortality rates is it high, especially in West Africa?
Ooh, there was a time, I'm not even sure. The rates will be high. Well, put it this way. West Africa doesn't have as much, what's the word? The treatment, morphine, the way they treat. Look, let me take, for example, blood transfusion.
Yeah.
I wonder how well they screen the blood in West Africa. Because you have, when you're giving people blood transfusions, you don't want to give them other conditions worse than what they already have. You know what I'm talking about. So you have to screen the blood. And let me tell you, I would be very hesitant to take a blood transfusion in Nigeria or Sierra Leone. Sorry. Even in England, to be honest, but that's me.
Understandable.
So I would think, I don't know what the mortality rates are, but people live. In fact, didn't Nigeria have somebody who lived to 90 something? Sometimes we get these magazines on sickle cell, and I remember one had this really old lady, because whereas you have the cold here, we have the warmth there, but you shouldn't get dehydrated, and you have to drink water, but that water has to be pure of all these funny, dodgy things. So even though it's warm there, the heat means you need to drink water, but you don't want to be drinking water that will give you infection.
Yeah.
So it's, we know that people die at home with sickle cell. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you very much.
Somebody else had their hand up.
Yes, Lola, go for it.
Not so much a question, but to say, following the saying that prevention is better than cure, I think it's crucially important that we include education in whatever strategy we're putting up, and for two reasons. From what we've seen tonight, it's an inherited condition. And it will arise when you have SS from 2 AS and AS.
Yeah.
So if you have an education before people form relationships, and we're looking for an AA or an AS. I'm not seeking to engineer anything here, but I think it makes sense to educate people to say, before you go into relationships, ascertain your genes. If you're an AS, then there's a high risk that if you go with another AS, you end up with an SS child. And from that
25%.
Exactly. And from that point of view, it makes sense, to say, play it safe and go for an AA relationship. That's one. Secondly, the stigma around this condition, which we've again heard tonight, it is something that education can help eradicate. Because look at COVID-19, we cannot even explain it, and this is something, that nobody knows how you pick it up, So for something that we can't explain, I think when people are well educated about how this comes about, we can actually say, it's nothing to be worried about or to feel embarrassed about discussing, and then go forward from there. So I do hope that when we come up with a strategy, education will feature very much in that strategy. So this is really for Caroline and Charity. Otherwise, we're back to square one.
Yeah, if you have listened to our video,
yes,
there's education there.
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Thank
all
you.
across. But what you understand about education, you can only educate so much. It has to be an organized where the government has to play a significant part in order to embed it in the primary, secondary, and university. But when we're talking about Africa, you see that structurally, Africa is very disjointed. There's nothing that is working cohesively. So education is there. And I remember when I was in Nigeria, when I was growing up in Nigeria, testing for sickle cell is what we do. Yeah, it is happening, but the level it is happening is not as much as it should. Yeah, but it's happening in pockets. If you have a person who is enlightened about it, it will educate the family, and the family will go for tests. And this is what we advise, because one of my husband's nieces, yeah, there was one relationship she was starting, and both of them went for tests. We saw that both of them are traits. So they didn't carry on, because they know the impact of having a child with sickle cell. So it is happening, but the level is happening is not as much as we should have wanted to be. And it has to come from government, organization, and our politicians, our president, to make sure that this is happening from grassroots or bottom up. Yeah, but it is happening. And this is one of the things we want to do so that it will be organized. We will send the information across. We create the awareness so that people will know what they're getting into. And of course, the service, yeah, and screening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me just add something to say that I think from my experience and just sort of knowing, I think people in Africa are very much more aware of sickle cell there than here.
Yes.
You know, just, you know, I think over there we call it traits, you know, here they call it, the screening program calls it carrier status, and they use both. But people at home, I understand even some churches do premarital counseling, where they tell the couple about the risks of having two people who are trait. They do it in Ghana, and I think they do it in Nigeria.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Yes, they do that in Nigeria.
Yeah, so I think that the people are aware, and as Charity said that two people who were trait broke up because, you know, because of the chance of them having a child with sickle cell. The screening program here in England, and no screening program, well, I'm speaking from a British perspective, no screening program is set to genetically engineer babies. You know, basically, it's there to give you information for you to make your own informed choice. So when you are told that there's such and such a risk, when they screen two people, they call the father is a risk as well. They have the counseling, and they're told the risks of their baby having a child with sickle cell and all the implications. But at the end of the day, they make up their mind whether they go ahead and take that risk. I'll tell you something. I had a client with, she had sickle cell, and she had 2 children with sickle cell. And we went on a radio interview. We're doing a radio interview. I think we did it over the telephone. I can't remember. But the presenter was saying, why have you, you know, you have the condition, you know what you go through. Why did you have a child with the condition? She was asked that, you know, white presenter asked her that. And she actually said, look, one, it didn't affect her that much, but she said, if I aborted that child, it would have been like I was aborting myself. That was her answer. And I thought that was quite a powerful answer. She said, look, you know, I have sickle cell, but I didn't want to abort my child, because that's almost like saying my child isn't worthy to live, whereas I am living. You see what I mean? You get what that was the answer. And I think the presenter just was dumbfounded by that reply, you know? So sometimes, and another thing, sickle cell doesn't affect everybody the same way. We have lawyers and doctors, hematologists, you know, sadly Ade has passed, but we used to have a hematologist who looked after people with sickle cell, a consultant hematologist who had the condition himself. So, you know, I think families just make up their minds themselves. And sometimes when they have children with the condition already, you wonder, I think the most I had was a family of 4 children with sickle cell. So you see people, they make up their own mind.
Quite unfortunate.
Huh?
I say it's quite unfortunate. It's in the same family. It's
Yeah, I've got brother with sickle cell, and I had a sister as well. He passed away 18 years ago. But my brother is doing very well. He's just a year younger. He's 54, and is sometimes where he gets his strength from is beyond me, honestly. But he's doing well. He's in this country, and he's
your
younger brother.
Yeah.
So like I said, my younger sister, she died 10 years ago.
In this country or in America?
No, in Nigeria.
Sorry.
Nigeria, just because she couldn't get oxygen and get the blood transfusion. And
yeah, you see.
Yeah, she passed away. It's so sad.
It is quite
dear fellows.
In Nigeria.
I know somebody, well, I know of somebody, I didn't know her, but not this past Christmas. I think it was the Christmas before. She went on holiday from here to Freetown and she died. She went on holiday from here, you know. She suffers from sickle cell. She went and she died, I think, New Year's Day.
Change of environment.
You know, yeah, that was so sad when I heard that, really. Very sad. She went on holiday, was enjoying herself at Christmas, and then something must have happened and she died, you know. So Africa has to, I don't know, we you know, and the some of the medications, and they're doing a lot of research on medications that will help alleviate the crisis and all that. But we have to make sure that that sort of medication is available where it's most needed. And what you find is a lot of these treatments are so expensive that people in Africa can't afford it, you know?
Yeah, like hydroxyurea.
Yeah, there's hydroxyurea, which you know, which really helps with crisis, but I don't know how available or how that is in. I think they use it in Nigeria and India.
Yeah, but it's not widely available, which is very sad because it will make a difference.
But also you also need to track hydroxyurea. You have to go for monitoring as well, blood tests. When you're taking it, you go for regular monitoring. And how will that happen enough? You know, that's another restriction or limitation, really. You know, so yeah, we just have to try, keep on trying.
Well, fellows, thank you. Thanks a lot for this exchange. And I know we can carry on probably for some more time, but unfortunately our allotted time here is over. In fact, we are a minute over. So I would like to thank on behalf of the club Iyamide for this wonderful thought, and we're hoping Caroline and Charity and our president Bose, we're hoping that we be able to get this project from the ground, and of course we will need your support and guidance all the way through. So hopefully this is not the end of this session, but start of a partnership. Before we end, I just to I just wanted to say a couple of items of any other business. Two things. This past weekend, me and Trevor Blackman spoke at the Rotary in London conference. The YouTube links will be available shortly. I will circulate them as soon as we have them. So that's one. Secondly, we have submitted 5 district grant applications off the back of the requests that we received from the finalists and the winners of the East London Community Heroes Awards a couple of weeks ago. We are hoping to get all 5 of them, but if not, then we're thinking we'll get at least 4 out of the 5 district grants approved. We'll have to watch this space, but there we are. Another charity partner of ours is Rotary Kids Out. We work with them every year where we take out kids for fun days out in summers and in during Christmas time. But this year, this has not been possible, and a number of these kids will not be able to get their biannual day out. So Kids Out this year has launched an appeal of giving these kids a gift hamper, which is the value of that gift box or gift hamper is £80, but because they are sourcing them in bulk, it is costing them £25 a box. And our immediate past president, Soraya, and our president, Bose, wishes that this club sponsors at least 4. I have not seen the accounts yet, but I know that a number of you have donated to that cause. So if you have not, then please do donate to this wonderful cause. I will send a reminder on our WhatsApp. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining.
That's okay.
Iyamide, thank you so much.
That's all right.